Okay, now I'd like to introduce our Mission Moment speaker, Yolanda Seeley. Yolanda came to us when she found herself in the very difficult situation of being a homeless mother of two. Yolanda is a veteran, and this was unlike any circumstance that she had ever found herself in before. So she has graciously agreed to share her story with us today, and I know you're going to be blessed by it. Welcome, Yolanda.
Sorry. Just give me a minute. I got to get my paper. Somebody set the waters on. Okay. Sorry. All right. I'm going to just put this here. Okay. I'm a little nervous, but hello, my name is Yolanda Seeley. I was born and raised in Rantoul, Illinois. I've always been a hard worker, and in high school, I was a triathlete. I played basketball, volleyball, and I ran track, and I was an honor student. My talents earned me a Division I scholarship. I played basketball at the University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana. When I graduated from the University of Illinois, I moved to Houston, Texas, and shortly after, I joined the United States Army. I served 8 years in the Army, active duty, and 2 years Army Reserve. I'm a mother of 2 beautiful girls. I'm getting emotional just thinking about because when he spoke about the signs and the homelessness and the judgments and memories. So, sorry, let me get through this. I'm a mother of 2 beautiful girls, Ariana, my daughter who's 14, and Ariel, who's 3 years old. And those are the joys of my life. Since I graduated from high school, I've always been on my own. I solely provided for me and myself and my children. And I prided myself on that. You know, I was always able to take care of everything by myself. I never wanted handouts. I never needed anybody to help me with anything. So when I got out the military, I went back to school and I got my master's degree. I got my master's in 2016. I completed it with my MBA with the focus in global supply chain management. I moved to Dallas from Temple, Texas in 2017, and I had a job down here, so I came down here for a job, but it didn't work out, and so I lost my job. Because I was in the military, I did receive a disability because I hurt myself when I was in the military, so I was able to live off of that because I didn't get unemployment or anything when I lost my job. So I stayed at home with my child, and I looked for a place for us to, a cheaper place for us to stay and another job. I was living in an apartment with a 2-year-old, and I don't know if anybody's ever lived in an apartment or if you had a 2-year-old, you know 2-year-olds do not sit down. So my downstairs neighbor constantly complained about me and my child and the movements and everything, and so management came to me one day and were like, you have to go. And me not really understanding my rights or anything like that, I said I would leave. And so I looked for another place to stay, and when I found a place to stay, I gave my notice at the apartments, and I was waiting for my day to move. But the house that I was gonna move into, that fell through because the tenant that had moved out left it in shambles. So it was like a rainy weekend, and the ceiling caved in. And so I couldn't move there. So when I went back to the apartment and asked them, can I stay? They told me I couldn't stay because they had already rented the apartment out, so I had to leave. I'm gonna get back on. Sorry, I'm getting emotional. When I was physically able to view that house, it was total shambles. And so I went back to them and I asked them, you know, is there anything else I can do? And they were like, no. So I had to move out. I had to put all my belongings in storage, and I stayed at a friend's house for a couple of weeks. I spent my days at the library searching for jobs and at workforce here in Texas, or here in Tarrant County looking for a place to stay and jobs. I went on a couple of interviews, which meant I had to wake up in the morning, go to my storage unit, find some clothes for me to wear for an interview so I can be presentable, and then go to the interview. And I just didn't understand how come I wasn't able to get anything. I was desperate need, and so I started reaching out to some of the local programs because, like I said, my pride wouldn't let me do that in the beginning. I was like, I can do this on my own. I can do it, and I can figure out something. But I got to the point where I couldn't do it anymore, and I was desperate, so I started reaching out to local programs that were designed to help veterans during the hard times. I would sit down with these programs and answer their questions, fill out their paperwork, and it would often take hours to complete. During the questioning process, I found out that I did not fit the background of the people that many of these programs were designed to help. I didn't need job training. I have an MBA. I was not a battered woman. I don't have a criminal history. I've never touched drugs in my life. I have earning potential. I just needed a place for me and my kids to live and a job. There were a couple of programs that said that they could help, and I was told that they would be able to help me with the initial move-in costs like the security deposit and first month's rent. This really excited me and motivated me even more to do all I can to get out of the current situation that I was in. But after initial meeting, I could not get anyone on the phone. I tried to work with 4 different agencies, but when I called to tell them about the place that I found, because I'm looking on my own too, I'm not just relying on them, I would get no response. I would lose the apartment to another tenant, and I would have to start all over again. During this time, I lost several apartments and one house that I could have rented because none of the agencies were able when I needed them. They weren't available when I needed them. So I would move from one agency to the other, never receiving anything from any of them. I felt deflated because I didn't know what more I could do. I had been self-sufficient my whole life. I worked hard. I wasn't looking for any handouts. I wasn't looking for any for a leading hand to pull to support me. I just needed somebody to just give me a hand up. I fell into a deep depression. I was doing all I could, and I just couldn't catch a break. And to make matters worse, I had to leave my friend's house because her parents came to stay with her, and they did not have any space for me and my kids. It took a lot of swallowing my pride to even ask to stay at their place. And if it weren't for my kids, I would have never asked. I told them I had a place to stay because I didn't want them to feel sorry for me or feel guilt for me having to leave. So we left their house, and when they would call, I would tell them that we were doing fine so they wouldn't worry. During this time, I was lucky enough to have my youngest stay with her father and my oldest spend time with her friends. But this only deepened my depression because for the first time in my children's life, I was not able to provide for them. I felt like I was letting them down. When my kids were away, I would always sleep in my car to save some money so that I wouldn't have to get a room, because when I would be with them, I wouldn't want them to sleep in the car with me. I spent my disability check getting rooms when my kids were with me. I tried to stay in a shelter, but there are only a couple of shelters that take women and their children, and they were full. There were a couple that were not full, but they wanted to place my oldest daughter in a different area away from me, and the others required that I make it to the shelter at 2 p.m. and wait in line to guarantee me a bed. I was not sure how I would ever do that, considering my daughter didn't get out of school until 4 p.m. I just didn't understand how there were so many places designed to help people in need, but they couldn't help me. During the lowest time in my life, I was lucky to meet Randall with Pathfinders. I was skeptical because I had heard all these other programs tell me what they can do to help, and I was going into 4 months of homelessness with no end in sight. But Pathfinders, it was different. I would call Randall, and he would always pick up. He would speak to me, and he would listen while I vented to him during my times of frustration. My mentor and we developed a plan of attack to help me get on my feet. I was introduced to a person who helped me focus my resume because I had several jobs and they were trying to make sure that I'm zoning in on the jobs that I actually wanted. And I was able to get more interviews doing that. I was blessed to receive a call back from one of the many jobs that I applied for during this time. After interviewing, I knew I had the job. I knew it. It was like I went in there and I killed it. When they called me back, of course, they reaffirmed what I had already knew in my heart. So then me and my mentor, we focused on finding me a place to stay. Now that I had a job, I knew that that would be easy. But one of my biggest problems that I had ran into is because late payments from the years that for the time that I was out of work, I'm missing all these payments. My credit took a huge hit. So it was hard for me to find places initially, but we were able to find a place. They introduced me to a woman, a volunteer here at Pathfinders, and she worked with me, and she worked with several people who were low income, poor credit. She sent me a list of places around Tarrant County, and I was like, I had no idea there were these many places because I've been calling around and I couldn't find anything, but she was able to focus in. Then she called these places for me and spoke to them and asked them would they work with me and let them know that I had a job, that I had money, that I would be able to pay my rent and everything, and that I had an agency that was going to help me to pay the security deposit and everything. And she got on the phone and she did that for me. And the greatest thing in the world. When I spoke to Randall and I told him that I found a place, he did the paperwork at Pathfinders, that emergency fund that pays down payments and to ensure that I wouldn't lose the apartment. So I was amazed at how quickly he was able to move. That day truly changed my life. And it was the help that I needed to get back on my feet. I have never been more grateful in my life. I was able to move into my apartment and get all my stuff out of storage finally. Currently, me and my children, we live in the apartment that I got when I started working, and I'm still working, and I work at Boeing. On April 1st, because I had been working as a contractor for a year, and so on April 1st, I start my full-time position, a level 3, which I'm extremely proud of. And I was blessed to have found Pathfinders. I really was. And that's just the proof that I'm trying to tell you that the donations that you guys are giving, that's the money that got me into my apartment. The emergency fund, because any other money that comes is government, and it has to go through all the red tapes. So when it boils down to it, they can't get you that money right away. So if you need a place to stay, if you're in dire need, if it's an emergency, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to wait 3 weeks? If it's an emergency, you can't wait 3 weeks when you're living in your car, when your children don't have a place to stay, and when you're hungry. So, bless you guys all.